Well, good morning, everybody. Danny back from Deepsouth Homestead on porch time today. Of course, we're back over at Pecan Grove. We're going to try to make us a seat here and see how this works out. We're going to use a mineral tub to sit on. Whew, guys, it is a Sunday morning. The sun's already up bright. Not a cloud in the sky. It's been that way for weeks on end. Oh, hot. The high today is supposed to be 85 to 86. The mornings are 61 to 65 degrees, which is nice. But when that sun crests them trees that over on the backside of that field, the game on then, because I mean it starts getting hot. But I guess here it is the 29th of October and still in the 80s. But the day this comes out, I'm shooting this on a Sunday. The day this comes out, we are supposed to only be 58 to 59 degrees for the high. And then, which would be Tuesday night, we're supposed to be down to 30 degrees. Talk about a roller coaster, 85, 86, and we're going all the way down to 30. That's why you see, well, it's not the only reason you see this. This is frost blanket stuff we have here. We're having so much trouble with deer here that we're taking precautions here with our container gardens, I guess you'd call it. We've got carrots down there, and we've got kale and different things all in here. And that's just prime for a deer. Now to my left right here, I have my onions and I have my cabbages and stuff. They have cages around them. Then in the background, I have my citrus trees back here and all. And a couple of other little bushes back here. Up under these pine trees, and it only gets sun for a few hours, which is going to be in just a few minutes, in the middle of the day. And this stuff is flourishing because this sun is so hot. Literally, it will bake you. It may say 85 to 86 degrees, but you walk out there in it and it will literally cook you because it's just screaming hot. Mainly because there's no clouds in the sky to break anything. I mean, we've had what we call up north when I was up there, the bluebird effect. I mean, it's just blue skies. I mean, there's nothing there. There's no chemtrails. Now, there's been a couple of days in the last week or so I've seen a few chemtrails, but other than that, it's just been crystal blue skies. Now, I know our brothers and sisters over in Texas and, you know, New Mexico, northern Louisiana, Arkansas, up around through there where the weather patterns is going up across there. The subtropical jet down here, we've got a stubborn high that's just been sitting over us now almost all year, to be honest with you. I mean, we're going on 3 months now with virtually no rain. The ponds are just about dried up all in the neighborhoods here around Pecan Grove here. I've looked at some of the people's ponds. They're just mud holes. So far, the one that we had built here on Pecan Grove is only about 3.5 feet low right now. It depends on when we get rain as to whether or not that'll even stay at that level. I have walked around in all the swamps around here on the property now. There's no water in any of them anymore. Everything is just completely dry. It's just sand in the bottom of it where the water's been running in streams. That has me concerned because when we bought the property, I was excited because there were water everywhere in these hollers. I mean, running streams was everywhere. But now, there's nothing nowhere on any of the property in here. I walked on some of the adjacent land around. It's company land. No water there. What few ponds we got, like I told you last time, that's all the wildlife's got for water. And my cows here, we have a well sitting right here beside me that we had dug and put in to water these cows with, because if I had been depending on this swamp down here to water my cows, I'd be in trouble if I hadn't drilled this well. And then again, who knows how long the well will work. You know, I mean, we're sitting here praying that we don't have a water issue with the well. But this is the beginning of things to come. I mean, you all remember I told you there's going to be water issues. There's going to be too much water in some places, not enough water in other places. That's actually in the Bible. I can't recall the verse right off the top of my head. I don't know if it's Joel, Amos, one of them, that talks about it'll rain in one city and they'll be flooded. The other cities will be burning up from no water whatsoever. That's actually scriptural. So it tells me that what's going on right now is not unnatural. It's scriptural. It's actually wrote down in the Word. So, you know, we've got the big project. Those of you who've been watching us, we've got a new high tone we're going to put up right in front of me right here. I've just got the pad for it built. It's nothing but a dust bed, but it's there. And I don't know how driving the pipes in the ground is going to go. It's probably not going to be a good thing. It's probably going to be kind of rough. If we can even drive them in the ground at all. We may have to wait till it rains to even put the thing up. I mean, I don't know. But nevertheless, we've been preparing other gardens over here on the property because we're going to let Deepsouth rest this coming year. We have better soil here, so we think our time would be better spent putting gardens here. The deer fencing worked fantastic this year for keeping the deer out. Now, the raccoons did get in. They didn't chew no holes in it. They just climbed over it and got in it. I mean, that's the only thing we could figure because we walked around it everywhere. We had it stapled to the ground all the way around it. Nothing went under it. They went over it. And there was one place on the back where they tore it down, the zip ties. They tore it out of the zip ties. And I think that was their key place that they learned they could get in at. But nevertheless, I eradicated every one that we knew of. Plus, we've taken out multiple other ones on the property here just so that we can have some peace of mind that maybe the crops won't be destroyed. But that's where we're at Pecan Grove. I mean, we're actually trying to utilize as much of this flat land over here as we can. It's good soil for growing our food because 2024 may not be the best year for us for growing. So we're going to go ahead and try. If we don't put it this way. Me and a man was talking in town here the other day. I was at a hardware store and I ran into him. I knew him. I knew he raised cattle. I was asking him, I said, have you got your ryegrass planted? And he said, no. He said, it's just a dust bed everywhere I'm at. And I said, well, I said, here at Pecan Grove where we live at, I told him, I said, I was able, the day that it rained, the day before I knew it was going to rain a little bit, and I was able to plant my food plots and get them. My food plots are up 3 inches tall. They're beautiful and green. No problem with them. I said, but what we did was when I got ready to cut my hay, I experimented 2 different ways. One, we went ahead and cut and baled one whole field over here, and then I went in and seeded behind it and took a section hair and ran over it and section haired it really, really good, and we left it. Here in front of me, or behind me I should say, these fields, I went in and just seeded them during the middle of the day while it was dry, and then I came in with a bush hog and I cut that grass and let it lay on top of all the seeds. And we've been having really heavy dews, really foggy mornings, and so far there's been enough moisture to keep that grass damp on the ground. I was telling this gentleman that actually my ryegrass is coming up out here and my clover. And he was amazed to hear those techniques. He said, I never thought about that. So those are things that we have going on here, and this is why I'm going to get into what I want to really talk a little bit about. I want to talk about when society fails. You see, we're going into a time when society is beginning to fail. It is, it's not like it used to be. Things are always changing, but it's rapidly becoming very difficult. Society is failing in many, many, many areas. What we see happening across the big pond is probably coming to America before long. Because once we get involved in the theater that's over there, then it's going to make us even more hated by the rest of the world. And there's factions all in this country and cells all in this country that will probably become active and begin working on damaging water systems, power systems, and society, when that happens, will begin to fail. And it depends on where are you at and where am I at when the system and society begins to fail. Because you will find out the true nature of people when things begin to crumble and fall apart and they can't get their food, they don't have any water, they can't get gas to go joyriding in, their cell phones, they can't afford their cell phones. I mean, this type of stuff, when the bills get where they can't pay them, then is when you're going to start realizing and understanding who people really are. Because you may have known your neighbor for the last 25 years, and they may turn out to be somebody you really didn't expect them to be. That's what we've got to prepare for. We've been preparing for water and food and electricity. We've been preparing for all these things for years. I've been trying to tell y'all for the last 6 years, get ready. This day is coming, and it's rapidly approaching now. But remember, I know those of you who've watched me for a long time, I did a video a long time ago called The Most Dangerous Animal on Planet Earth. And in that video, I talked about the most dangerous animal on planet Earth is the human being. Because when you take food and water away from a human where they can't feed their family or their children, they then become, no matter how gentle and how calm they are, they then become the most dangerous animal on planet Earth. Think about that. It is then that you really don't know what a person's capable of until they're without something to eat or they're without any food and their children are screaming and crying because they're hungry. At that point, you will see the true color of people as to whether or not they're willing to work with people or they're willing to just rob and steal. I'm going to probably say they're going to go with the latter. There are more people who's going to rob and steal because of the society that we live in today. Because society has begun to fail. We have not taught our children. Our grandchildren have not been taught. Everybody thinks that you should be able to just run to a grocery store and buy what you want. Let me tell you something. Farmers markets are not new. If you go all the way back to the scriptures and you begin to read the Bible, you will see that many times the Apostle Paul talked about going into the marketplace. Marketplaces were quite common back then. People lived in cities back then, didn't have ways to grow stuff. They had to rely on the people who lived out in the country to bring in their produce into these marketplaces. And they would go in and they would haggle with them, and try to get the best barter and get the best deals that they could so that they could feed themselves. But understand, they went daily to the marketplace. And because they had no refrigeration, they had no way to keep stuff on a daily basis like we do now, like refrigerators and freezers and freeze dryers and on and on, canning and all this kind of stuff. Back then, they ate from day to day, and they lived from day to day with that lifestyle. So farmers markets are not anything new, and we have to understand those people during that time ate in season. The problem with our society today is we've learned that we don't have to eat in season. We can go to a grocery store and get strawberries in the middle of December and January, because they've been shipped in from another country, sprayed with only God knows what, and probably the most horrible thing for your body that you could ever eat. But we think, we're eating strawberries and bananas, two of the most heavily sprayed crops in the world. And And yet we ingest all this stuff thinking that we're doing something great. We get bell peppers in the middle of wintertime, and they've been shipped from another country, sprayed once again with only Lord knows what. And we think, oh, I'm eating vegetables, I'm eating healthy. No, you're not. We need to get back to learning to do like our forefathers all the way back to biblical times, eat in season. That's why you see us growing in containers now, and we have the high tunnels that hopefully we'll get this one put up this year. We may not, I don't know. We learned over at Deepsouth that high tunnels over there have saved our tail during the winter months. I mean, we have grown, y'all watch us, we've grown tomatoes all the way through the season. I'm talking about through the coldest freezes we've had, we grew tomatoes in them things. And then cabbages, and I have grapes I've grown over there, bananas, asparagus, strawberries, beans, you name it, peas, onions, peppers. I've got pepper plants over there now, 2 years old, fixing to go on their third year. I mean, growing, the technology that we've came up with has really helped us to be able to grow in inclement seasons so that we can have fresh stuff out of season. And that's why if you can't do this, then eating in season is probably the healthiest thing for you. But if you have these means, then you're able to grow and have what you need throughout the winter months, and you're able to have fresh peppers in the wintertime. You're able to have fresh tomatoes in the wintertime, and that's good. But when society fails, I got up this morning. Of course, I get up every morning really, really early, came over to Pecan Grove, which like I do most every morning because I have to feed the cows. And now that the sun's coming up a lot later, I'm here a lot earlier, and I'm just sitting in the dark, or I'm in the barn with the lights turned on. This morning, I did a little test. I walked out into the dark, turned all the lights off, and just walked out in. Well, it wasn't really that dark. The moon was bright, but I walked out and I just stood out there and I said, now, if I was someone and society had collapsed and I had nothing to eat and I didn't know where any food was, how would I find it? How would I know who has what? And as I stood there, the roosters began to crow in the distant farms around. And I could hear those roosters crowing, and I would go, wow, now there's a place they've got eggs. If they've got a rooster, they got chickens. I said, they got something to eat on that farm. Now, if I was a person who was the kind of person who was ready to go take what I wanted, I'd head in the directions of those roosters crowing early in the morning like that and try to be there by daylight. Or at least know the direction I'm going in. Because you see, things will give us away. Now, I didn't hear any cows lowing or anything like that. Now, there is a creek way over about a mile from here. On the other side of that creek, I did hear a donkey braying. So I know there's a donkey over there somewhere. And if people have a donkey, they usually have sheep or goats or something to keep coyotes away. And I was thinking, now that would be a lot longer walk than what I heard these roosters, but there's also food in that direction. So guys, we have to understand when society fails, our animals, now my neighbor, he lives quite a ways down the road here, but I could hear his dog barking. So if I didn't know anything about the area and I heard that dog barking down there, I'd said, there's somebody that lives down there. They might have something to eat. So the animals definitely would give you away. Now, I did not hear the first cow mooing anywhere at any given time all morning as I listened. Up until a while ago, I've not heard the first cow moo anywhere. Even though I have cattle here, and I know a lot of the people around here who do have cows, I never heard the first cow. But I did hear the donkey, and I did hear the roosters, and I did hear a dog. So, keep in mind that certain animals will give you away if you're trying to remain hidden during a collapse of society, that your animals will give you away. And when that happens, you're going to have to be willing and understand you're going to have to deal with the worst and the most dangerous animals on planet Earth, which are human beings. So keep those things in mind, guys. Prepare yourself for those things when they come, because they are coming. It's not a matter now of if anything's going to happen. It's when it happens. We see collapses in our own governmental system. I mean, we've thrown out our own speakers of the House. We have a new one come in. I don't know a lot about any of this stuff because I haven't been online in a month now. I'm actually training myself to stay offline as much as I can, just so that when everything collapses, it's not a shock to me. I want to go ahead and already be, ready. I've told y'all I don't own a cell phone anymore. I actually threw it away. Wanda has one. I don't have one. I'm getting quite used to not having a phone around. And because when things begin to happen, those things will go by the wayside. So I'm going to kind of focus on what I would do when society fails. Because everywhere I look around me, as I travel from town to town, coming back and forth to Pecan Grove, stopping at, you stop different places. The chatter that I hear when I'm in places, I listen. Even though I have a weapon on me at all times, I listen to the chatter of people. I can tell the frustration in lots of people's voices. You hear people and they're paying for their gas and they go, man, I don't know what I'm going to do if gas keeps going any higher. I guess, and they just start, you can tell the frustration. And you'll hear somebody chime in and say, well, you ought to go to the grocery store, and then you hear these conversations get started in these little grocery store, gas station type places, and and you see just where people's minds are and how quickly they become agitated at the circumstances that they're having to live under. And lots of them are like, yeah, it has, all because of these stupid people across the water over, they can't get along over there. We're having to go over there and fight a war and all this kind of stuff. And you can tell there's no patriotism anymore. These people they're angry, they're frustrated. They feel like they just deserve things, that life should just be good for them. They don't realize that our fathers and forefathers and distant relatives had to cut out a living out of the land when they came here. It wasn't just handed to them. They had to cut it out. They had to make a place to live. They had to hand cut all the wood for their homes, their barns, their fences. Everything was a physical labor. They weren't able to run to a store and just pick up a roll of wire, staples, steel fence posts, electric post drivers, battery powered, gas powered this. They had to do everything by hand. And the society we live in today, if somebody has to do something by hand, they're like, oh, gosh, am I ever going to get through with this? Man, this is hard. I mean, that's all you hear now. These are the steps of a society that's beginning to fail. People can't get along with one another. People have no respect for their neighbors. I've witnessed this in many places that I've lived at and been. People just take it for granted. I lived at a place. The man's children kept coming on my place hunting, and I said, sir, you can't let your kids keep coming over here hunting. This is my place. Well, God owns it all. They ought to be able to go anywhere. I'm like, no, when you pay the taxes on my place, you can come over here. And made him angry. And he said, well, my boys, or children, shall I say, there's actually boys and girls, they're going to go where they want to go. I said, well, if they do, then you could be arrested. You could have the law called on you. Well, that's just ludicrous. I don't know why anybody would do that. I mean, this is the mentality of people that we're beginning to have to deal with here in the future, I'm thinking. And, That's just one instance I've faced in my life. There's actually been several of them. Knowing whether or not your neighbors are good people will determine what kind of circumstances you're in. And even you and me, if we get hungry, how far will we go? What will we be willing to do? Stop and think about that. When your food runs out, when your water don't work, and you can't flush your toilet, you got nowhere to go to the bathroom, you got no clean water to drink, you got no way to cook your food. If you did have it, you got no way to cook it. What would you do? Would you be like these people in these foreign countries that you see walking back up from the woods? They walk a half a mile to the woods, and they come walking back with a bundle of sticks on their back, and they take those sticks, and it's enough to last them for a day or maybe 2 days to cook their food with. They sit by hand and they do all their food that they've raised. They grind their own grain by hand, and they sit and they make their flour or corn based this or that. Would you be willing to go that far? Do you have a rocket stove? Can you even cook anything? If you had the sticks, do you know how? These are skill sets that are going to be very important when society fails. And it is going to fail. The scripture tells us it's going to fail. The Bible tells us in the latter days that people will be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. The love of many is going to wax cold. Parents and children are not going to be able to get along. People will be unholy, unthankful, ungrateful. They'll stir up strife, the Bible tells us this is coming. It ain't if it's going to happen, it's when it happens. What will you do when you see the scriptures beginning to be fulfilled? Because prophecy is happening all around us as I speak. Guys, today, please get yourself set up for when society fails, because the Bible tells us it's going to happen. And when it does, there's only one to look to, and that is our Christ, our Savior. He is the only one that you will be able to trust during that given period of time. Lean on Him, not on your own understanding. Man's heart is wicked above all things. But lean and base everything off of Christ. And when that happens, you will not go wrong. Thank you guys from Deep South Homestead.